Hi and welcome everybody. My name is Isadora de Oliveira Silva. I'm a Concordia University student at the Department of Psychology, and I'm here today to present the study IPIP-HEXACO, Replication of Personality Dimensions, Understanding the Relationship Between Variables. First, I'm going to talk about the relevance of replication in the field of psychology and why this study is important. Then, I will briefly explain what hexaco is, present our hypothesis, and explain how we conducted this experiment. Moreover, I will discuss its results and implications, and finally, I will present the conclusions that were drawn from this study. As we know, replication is a major concern in the field of psychology. Psychologists perform replications to try to validate previous findings in the literature. One important topic of research in psychology is personality. The study of personality is important because it allows psychologists to predict people's preferences and behaviors in certain circumstances. As such, it is important to have valid and reliable models to measure personality. The hexaco model is a well-established scale that defines personality in terms of 6 different traits. This study aimed to look at the relationship between 3 of its dimensions: openness, conscientiousness, and extraversion. Previous research has shown that longer versions of hexaco, such as hexaco PIR, are time-consuming, and shorter versions, such as hexaco 60, might lack internal consistency reliability. Our goal was to replicate previous findings on hexaco and to determine if hexaco is a good and valid measure of personality. Based on previous research done by Ashton and Lee in 2009, we expected conscientiousness and extraversion to have the highest positive correlation among all personality traits. We also expected conscientiousness and openness and extraversion and openness to have low and non-significant correlations. Since each dimension of hexaco is supposed to measure a different personality trait, we expected an overall low correlation between them. We also included moral identity and belief bias variables to run a manipulation check and ensure the participants were putting in the necessary effort to our study. As such, we hypothesized that both these variables would not correlate with hexaco, but would positively correlate with each other. For this study, we used a convenient sample of 55 Concordia University students from a research and methods class. Participants were presented with 60 items from the IPIP-HEXACO scale. These questions assessed openness, conscientiousness, extraversion, and honesty-humility. Participants' level of agreement with each statement was determined using a Likert scale. We asked participants 3 basic questions, and these questions were answered using a slider, with each slider having different scales and ranges to make the participants think in different ways. The moral identity scale contained 13 questions, and we used the list of adjectives to prime the participants. For the ethical reasoning task, we provided participants with logical syllogisms, and they needed to indicate whether the syllogism was valid or invalid in terms of formal logic. At the right side of the slide, we can see an example of the IPIP-HEXACO question, moral identity, and a logical syllogism. The study began with an informed consent and with a general introduction. Participants were presented with IPIP-HEXACO personality items, followed by the 3 basic questions. Then, participants were presented with the moral identity scale, and lastly, they performed the ethical reasoning task. To determine the relationship between the hexaco traits, we ran a Pearson's correlation analysis. As we can see in the table and in the figure, there was a marginally significant positive correlation of 0.24 between conscientiousness and extraversion, supporting hypothesis 1. Moreover, as supporting evidence for hypothesis 2, openness presented a low, non-significant correlation of negative 0.05 with extraversion and of 0.09 with conscientiousness. As for our manipulation check, the variables behaved accordingly. There was a positive correlation between moral identity and belief bias score, and neither variable correlated with hexaco. The results suggest that our study was able to replicate previous findings from hexaco using the IPIP-HEXACO scale. As predicted by the assumptions of HEXACO, we did not find strong correlations between openness, conscientiousness, and extroversion, with conscientiousness and extroversion being only moderately correlated. It is important to mention that, although there was an inconsistency with previous research, as our results yield a negative correlation between extroversion and openness, while other research yields a positive correlation, this correlation was not statistically significant. We conclude, therefore, that the HEXACO model is a good measure of personality dimensions. In summary, our pattern of results serves as evidence that openness, conscientiousness, and extroversion are, indeed, measuring different personality traits. And we recommend the continued use of HEXACO as a means to measure personality. Thank you.